Welcome to the deep dive, everybody. We always get a bunch of interesting requests for deep dives, but this one's well, it's a first.
Yeah, so we're going to be tackling this pretty scathing book review.
Really, a roast of Kevin Wilde's book, Coachability, the Leadership Superpower.
And, you might be thinking a book review for a whole deep dive, but
Yeah.
trust me on this one. This is not an ordinary review.
Okay.
This thing is witty, it's pointed, and it really takes aim at not just Wilde's book, but the entire, leadership industrial complex,
I mean, some of the lines in this roast are just laugh out loud funny.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
They're taking down everything. His ideas, the evidence he uses, his methods. They even go after his character.
Wow. That's intense.
Yeah, it is. I've never seen source material quite like this before.
Exactly. And while the tone is definitely harsh, it really does make you think.
Yeah.
One of the first things the reviewer points out is that Wilde's whole book is about this idea of
Right.
coachability being the ultimate leadership trait, but he never actually defines what it means.
Wow, you really think that would be like Leadership 101, right?
Right. It's a great point. And I'm curious, for you, what does coachability even mean?
Right.
Is it just about blindly following orders? It's worth thinking about because the reviewer goes on to point out some pretty glaring issues with Wilde's logic and use of data throughout the book.
The reviewer points out a few different instances where Wilde, misinterprets basic concepts,
Yeah.
like ratios, and even makes counting errors in lists. Yeah. And, I mean, those might seem like minor things,
Yeah.
but it makes you question, how rigorous his arguments actually are.
Right.
Especially in a book that's supposed to be this guide for leaders.
Yeah. And there's this one example I loved where Wilde compares leadership to updating computer software.
Yeah.
And he just totally misses the mark on zero-day exploits.
Uh-huh.
It's like he's saying, just blindly trust all the updates and everything's going to be fine.
Right.
But in the real world, it's obviously way more complicated than that.
Beyond the humor, it shows this lack of depth in his thinking.
And then there's that part where Wilde admits that he himself doesn't really like receiving feedback.
Okay, I have to admit, I did chuckle at that part. Come on. Talk about undermining your whole premise, right?
It does make you question how carefully he thought through the rest of his analysis.
Totally.
But let's move on to one of the most striking examples the reviewer brings up, this game that Wilde describes, where he asks a volunteer to find their hidden phone while everyone else is actively trying to stop them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and this one really struck a nerve with the reviewer.
Yeah, I can see why.
They saw it as a prime example of creating a low-trust environment and potentially humiliating someone you know,
Yeah,
all under this guise of leadership development.
right.
It's messed up. And the reviewer asks, how would someone like Captain Kirk react in that situation?
Oh, that's such a good comparison.
Right.
I can't imagine Kirk, standing by while those crew members getting sabotaged and humiliated like that.
Yeah.
He'd be all about teamwork and support,
Exactly.
not setting people up to fail.
And that leads us to the core of the reviewer's critique.
Okay.
They're arguing that Wilde's book and this whole trend it represents is actually driven by this thing called malignant narcissism.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and the reviewer lays out these 5 key warning signs of malignant narcissism.
Okay.
So, grandiose sense of self-importance, a need for excessive admiration, a sense of entitlement, a lack of empathy, and manipulative behavior.
Yes.
And they back up each point with really specific examples from the book. Remember those 8 pages at the beginning that are just gushing praise for Wilde and his work?
Oh, yeah.
The reviewer sees that as a classic sign of his need for admiration.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And then there's that whole thing where he expects everyone to adapt to his way of thinking,
Right.
but he seems resistant to change himself.
Mm-hmm.
That just screams entitlement and a lack of reciprocity.
Yeah. And I can't forget the part where he compares his readers to children.
What?
Yeah, who need to stay on Santa's nice list.
Oh,
yeah.
no.
Come on, man. We're adults trying to learn about leadership, not kids worried about getting presents.
Right. This is where that lack of empathy really shows.
Totally. And this is where the reviewer's analysis gets really interesting.
Okay.
They're arguing that malignant narcissism isn't just about ego.
Mm-hmm.
It's about using manipulation to exploit others for personal gain.
Wow.
And they point to some pretty disturbing examples in the book,
Like what?
like the stories of Serge and Alex.
Okay, yeah, remind me about them.
So Serge didn't express enough enthusiasm for Wilde's feedback.
Oh, no.
And he ended up facing some pretty negative consequences.
Wow.
And then Alex just tried to understand the reasoning behind the feedback, and he gets labeled as uncoachable.
Wow.
So these examples raise serious questions about how coachability can be used to punish dissent and reward blind obedience.
It's scary to think about.
It really is.
Yeah. It makes you wonder, like, is questioning the feedback even respectfully?
Right.
Is that seen as like a threat to Wilde's authority?
That's a good question.
It makes you wonder who's actually benefiting from this coachability craze.
Right.
The reviewer suggests that it's not the people seeking genuine growth. It's the companies and the managers who are looking for like a quick fix.
Right.
A way to control their employees.
Yeah.
And create a more compliant workforce.
So it's less about developing real leadership skills and more about creating a culture of obedience.
Exactly.
That's pretty messed up.
It is. And it's especially concerning when you think about the billions of dollars that companies spend on these leadership development programs.
Right. The reviewer points out this disconnect.
Yeah.
We have CEOs constantly complaining about the lack of leadership talent, but they just keep throwing money at these programs that seem to be producing very little in terms of results.
It really makes you wonder, is this focus on coachability and all these similar concepts, is it actually hindering the development of true leadership? Are we prioritizing obedience over critical thinking and initiative? And that's where the reviewer's perspective, even though it's extreme, can be really valuable. They force us to confront this darker side of leadership development.
Right.
And to question the motives of the people who are promoting these seemingly positive concepts.
Like coachability.
Exactly. Because, let's be honest, we've all encountered those bosses who weaponize these ideas and use them to manipulate and control their employees.
Yeah, instead of empowering them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the reviewer directly addresses the people who might be in that situation.
Oh, wow.
The ones who were assigned Wilde's book by their managers. They offer this really cynical but insightful advice.
What is it?
They say, the person who gave you Kevin's book is most likely a malignant narcissist who is angry that you didn't praise them enough for their feedback.
Oh, my God.
Right.
That's brutal.
It is.
But it's probably true in some cases.
Yeah.
And it highlights the need for discernment. Just because someone's in a position of authority or calls themselves an expert doesn't mean we should just blindly accept everything they say.
We have to be critical thinkers. The reviewer also has a message for the people who are buying Wilde's book in bulk for their organizations.
Oh, no.
Yeah, they're like, why are you doing that? Who put you up to this? Stop it. Oh, my God. It's funny, but also kind of terrifying.
It is. It raises concerns about the kind of culture those organizations are fostering.
Totally.
If they're embracing this kind of ideology, it suggests a real lack of trust in their employees.
Right.
And this desire to just control and micromanage every aspect of their behavior.
Which doesn't exactly create a breeding ground for innovation and creativity, does it?
No, not at all. The reviewer even goes so far as to say, your organization is on a steep decline toward a low-trust pit of snakes. I hope it's not too late.
Wow. Okay, that's a bit dramatic.
It is.
But the message is clear. The reviewer also doesn't hold back when it comes to calling out Sanger-Folkman.
Okay.
They say, I would be seriously embarrassed if I were peppered throughout Kevin's book praising it as brilliant. It's clear by your endorsement that you also wouldn't know real leadership if it slapped you in the face and yelled, drop and give me 20.
Whoa. They're really going in.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting point, though.
That is.
If these publishers are so eager to endorse and promote these books, are they complicit in perpetuating this potentially harmful ideology?
It's a good question.
The reviewer's final message to Kevin Wilde is really something.
Okay, what is it?
They say, you were never really all that useful. You were a checkbox, checked for corporate audits mandating roles like yours. Any influence you had in promoting people that satisfied you was highly misplaced. You've put psychopaths behind the wheel of the bus. I await your apology.
Damn, that's powerful.
It really is. It's a powerful way to end what is, honestly, a pretty remarkable piece of writing.
Yeah, it really makes you think about the responsibility that comes with having a platform and promoting ideas that can have a real impact on people's lives.
Absolutely.
The reviewer is suggesting that by promoting this narrow definition of coachability, Wilde has actually contributed to the rise of these narcissistic and manipulative leaders.
And that's where the reviewer's own personal story comes in.
No.
Which they share about the author section.
Yeah, what do they say?
Well, they describe their own experiences with manipulative colleagues and bosses who use this idea of receptiveness to silence dissent and punish anyone who dared to question their authority.
It's interesting how they connect that personal experience back to the book.
Right.
It shows how these abstract concepts can have really real and often harmful consequences. And, it takes a lot of guts to write something like this roast. To publicly challenge someone as well known as Wilde.
Absolutely. It's definitely a bold move, and it shows how strongly they feel about these issues. They were willing to risk their own reputation to speak out.
And I think that's admirable. It's easy to sit back and complain about the state of the world, but it takes real courage to stand up and say, enough is enough.
Great advice. So to our listeners out there, think critically. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of coachability and its potential pitfalls.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
We hope this conversation has given you some food for thought.
Right.
Until next time, keep questioning.
Yes.
Keep learning.
Keep learning.
And keep leading with integrity.
Awesome.